Chapter 111, Possible New Team Member. In general, the minimum team size for dungeon exploration is 3 adventurers, which is the recommended configuration by the Adventurers Guild. A party of 3 consists of an attacker, a defender, and a supporter, working together as a team. The attacker takes the lead in attacking the monster, while the defender is responsible for defending against the monster's counterattacks or assisting the attacker as per need. The supporter provides long-range assistance, and is responsible for using potions to heal when the 2 frontline members are injured. This is the case when the team is in a passive situation. As long as the supporter has the ability to kill monsters, even if they encounter multiple monsters, they can still break through the deadlock by having the 2 frontline members rotate their defense and wait for the supporter to eliminate the remaining monsters. But, if the team is reduced to 2 adventurers, the burden on both will become heavier. The attacker will no longer have anyone to help defend against the monster's counterattacks and assist in attacking, and the supporter will lose protection and be unable to safely provide long-range support. Without a defender, it is even more difficult to break through a deadlock once the party is in a passive situation. Therefore, for ordinary adventurers, exploring the dungeon requires a team of at least 3 members. Adding a teammate is more meaningful than increasing individual strength. In the deeper areas beyond the 37th floor, this requirement becomes even stricter. The minimum recommended configuration for the deep floors is 4 people, and if possible, one of them should be a healer. Luke and Ace belong to a party without a defender. However, compared to ordinary adventurers, Luke and Ace have never been in a passive situation, so they have never really experienced the advantages of a multi-person team in this regard. But if you ask if they have had any problems because of their small number, then of course there have been some. That is, during the rest period. This is actually one of the main reasons why the guild encourages a team of 3 adventurers to explore the dungeon. In the dungeon, the attacks of monsters are endless and never stop. The upper floors are fine, and the first half of the middle floors are also tolerable, but once you enter the second half of the middle floors, which is the floors after the large tree labyrinth, the density, refresh rate and attack frequency of monsters will increase drastically. As mentioned before, resting in a non-safe floor of the dungeon requires finding a place with only one entrance, such as a cave, a tree hole, or a chamber. Then, one person guards the entrance, another destroys the wall, and the remaining one rests in a rotating manner to recover their strength. However, this method has a very important prerequisite, and that is the 3-person rotation system. With only 2 people, Luke and Ace, it is obviously very difficult to use this method. This is also the main reason why Riveria is worried about them. After all, even if Luke is strong, he cannot not rest. Luke's stamina is not infinite, but the monsters in the dungeon are near infinite. Without rest, once you go deep into the dungeon, you are very likely to be exhausted to death by the monsters inside. 1 day without rest may not be a big deal. 3 days without rest may not be a big deal with Luke's current physical condition, but what about a week without rest? Not only that, but you also have to fight endless intense battles without being able to relax. If this continues for a week or half a month, even a strong man will collapse. Riveria's worries are not groundless. At first, when Ace hadn't grown up yet, Luke did indeed worry about how to rest inside the dungeon. However, these worries gradually disappeared as Ace gradually became stronger. Guarding the entrance while destroying the wall, not to mention Luke, even the current Ace can do it easily. But even so, the lack of a teammate still had an impact on Luke and Ace's dungeon exploration. Luke and Ace, who have already upgraded to LV4 adventurers, are qualified to initially step into the 37th floor, which is known as the deep floors. But facing this deadly zone, they can't cross it no matter what without suitable teammates. The combat interval in the deep floors of the dungeon is only 5 minutes at most, and even less than a minute at shortest. According to Ace's current strength, she is not yet able to take on the responsibilities of 2 team members alone in the deep floors. If the two of them plan to enter the deep floors, it means that Luke's rest time cannot be guaranteed. This is the biggest problem they are facing now. Either honestly wait for Ace to upgrade to LV5, or listen to Riveria's suggestion and add new members to their team. Luke knows that Ace will stay at LV4 for more than 2 years before she can level up, so waiting for her to be promoted to LV5 is not a good option. As for adding members to their team, to be honest, it is also very difficult. A team like Luke and Ace that has been trained together for several years can only choose new members from within their familia. But let alone within their familia, even looking at the entire Rio, besides Finn and other first-class adventurers, how many people can keep up with Luke and Ace's pace? Luke and Ace's combat style is a one-hit kill at super high speed. In battle, the two of them will move at a very high speed and instantly kill most of the monsters they encounter on their path, in order to constantly move forward. Even Ace, with the blessing of Ariel, Avenger, and the new skill that she didn't possess in her original storyline, can only do it without holding Luke back. This makes Luke wonder where to find another new teammate who can keep up with their pace and whose fighting style matches theirs. In fact, Luke has been thinking about finding a new teammate for a long time, and it's not that he doesn't have a clue on who to choose. In the current Rio, there are only 2 people who meet Luke's requirements. They are Bet Loga and Rio Lion. Bet has been surpassed by Luke and Ace in terms of level. He is now only a LV3 adventurer. But his fighting style is very compatible with Luke and Ace, and both of them are good at short-term battles at super high speed. Although his level is a bit low, Bet has 2 skills that allow him to increase his ability values in high-speed combat, which is not inferior to that of a regular LV4 adventurer. And Luke also knows that Bet has 2 other trump cards. As a new teammate, Bet is fully qualified. But Bet is not a member of Loki Familia now. As the leader of Vidar Familia, he has the responsibility to lead his entire familia, and it is unlikely that he will join Luke's team. And in recent times, it seems that Bet has not been seen around the city, and he hasn't even visited his favorite, Hibachitii, for a drink. Luke even wondered if Bet had already left Rio. Another candidate for teammate is Rio Lion, a rising star of Astria Familia. Rio can be said to be the best candidate for a new team member. Also a LV4 adventurer, her current ability values even surpasses Ace by a lot. She possesses powerful magic that can be used for long-range attack and a very rare recovery magic, and she is also good at fast-speed combat like Luke and Ace. Rio not only perfectly fits Luke and Ace's combat rhythm, but also makes up for their lack of long-range support and healing ability. She really is the most perfect choice for a new team member. However, Rio is even less likely to join Luke's team than Bet. Perhaps because of her competitive spirit, this elf lady has never given Luke and Ace a good face. Although she doesn't have any intention of hostility, she doesn't have any intention of interacting with them either. At the same time, Rio is also the mainstay of Astria Familia. She has her own fixed dungeon exploration team, so there is no need for her to join Luke's team at all. Chapter 112, Re-entering the Dungeon Swoosh. Swoosh. Poochie. Luke and Ace each swung their swords, instantly killing the monsters that surrounded them. After reporting to Finn, they gathered enough supplies for the 2 of them and went straight into the dungeon. The monsters on the upper floors of the dungeon were now completely ignored by the 2 of them. Killing monsters along the way made their progress very fast. The 2 of them did not plan to take the magic stones and items dropped by the monsters on the previous floors. This was also one of the shortcomings of their 2-person team. They couldn't carry too many items. Right now, Luke and Ace, who had just entered the dungeon, were carrying the most supplies they could without affecting their movement. The space they could leave for dropped materials was very limited. So, the 2 of them generally wouldn't pick up dropped magic stones and items before the 18th floor. Even in the large tree labyrinth area in the latter half of the middle floors, they would only pick up some high-value or relatively rare materials. The real harvest would be after they officially entered the lower floors. It was a pity to do this. After all, there was such a safe floor as the 18th floor in the middle floors. Generally speaking, even if adventurers wanted to enter the next floor, they would not give up the items they had obtained on the previous floors. Instead, they would bring them to Riviera Street on the 18th floor to deal with them. However, it was slightly different for Luke and Ace. The main reason was that the two of them didn't know how to bargain. That's right, even after living in this city for 3 years, these two people would still be cheated when they went shopping. And almost every time. This had become a hot topic in Rio. In fact, this did not mean that the two of them did not know that they were being cheated. It was more like they did not want to waste time. Luke and Ace were both the type of people who didn't care much about money. In their eyes, it was better to kill 2 more monsters than to haggle. So, the two of them never learned about the market price, and had no intention of wasting time haggling. And the price of recycling items in Riviera Street was already much lower than that on the ground. Luke and Ace, because they were unwilling to bargain and waste time, would further compress the sales price. This way, the profit they gained was very little. Since Luke and Ace were very fast at killing monsters, sometimes, picking up items was even slower than the speed at which they killed them. After wasting a lot of time but not getting much profit, the two of them decided to stop picking up dropped items before the 18th floor. As mentioned before, Luke and Ace advanced very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived on the 17th floor where the floor boss refreshed. The refresh of the Lonely King of the Labyrinth, also known as the Monster Rex, has a certain interval. Once it is defeated, it will not appear in the dungeon again until the next spawn time comes. This interval is about 3 months. Therefore, it is not always possible to see Goliath when you come to the 17th floor. On the contrary, it is more common not to see it. After all, behind it is Riviera Town. Sometimes, when there is a need to transport supplies to the surface, the Riviera Town will commission capable adventurers to clear out Goliath. In addition, one of the conditions for the Adventurers Guild to recognize a Familius expedition as successful is to defeat the floor boss. As the weakest floor boss, Goliath is actually quite popular. It is unknown whether it should be considered good luck or bad luck, but the moment Luke and Ace arrived on the 17th floor, they saw the huge figure standing in the center of the cave. Let's not waste any time this time. I'll restrict its attacks, and then you kill it. Luke looked at Ace and said. Ace nodded, indicating that she understood. Then, she accelerated and rushed towards Goliath. Roar. Ace, who did not hide at all, was immediately discovered by Goliath. It roared, and its 2 huge palms slammed down on Ace with great force, like a meteor shower covering Ace's head. Just when it seemed that Ace was about to be crushed into a pulp by the giant palm, 2 sword lights flashed, and Goliath's 2 giant palms that were slamming down suddenly stopped. Schwa! Poochie! Boom! Accompanying Severesta's sword light was the sound of Goliath's 2 severed arms. Goliath's arms fell to the ground, making a loud bang. The huge wound, the gushing blood, and the pain drove Goliath into a frenzy. Roar! The giant opened its mouth and tried to gather a sonic bullet to blast everything in front of it. Unfortunately, Ace had already rushed to its front. Staring quietly at the giant in front of her, Ace chanted, Tempest. After a jump, Ace was lifted into the air by the wind that surrounded her. The sword, wrapped in a wind, shattered Goliath's head in one blow. Bang! The roar stopped abruptly, and Goliath, with its head shattered, dissipated into black smoke in the air. After easily defeating Goliath, Luke and Ace passed through the passage and arrived at Riviera Street on the 18th floor. The two first went to find the manager of Riviera, Boris Elder, and asked him to send someone to collect Goliath's magic stone. Luke and Ace alone would definitely not be able to handle the huge magic stone dropped by the floor boss, so they could only leave it to Boris. Although doing so would lose a large part of the gain, it was better than throwing it away and wasting it. After a short rest on Riviera Street, Luke and Ace prepared to set off again. They did not plan to stay on the 18th floor for too long. The two of them had broken through all the way here, and their stamina consumption had not even reached the point where they needed to rest. The reason why they took a short break was mainly to check and maintain their weapons. Luke was fine. With Prana protecting him and holding Severesta, he had almost no need to repair his weapon and equipment. But Ace was different. Her armor was fine. Because she had not been hit by a monster once, there was no need to repair her armor at all. What's more, her armor was custom-made by Loki from Goibniu Familia, using Loki's hair and divine blood. It was not so easily damaged. Armor dress, Loki custom, a Palam's armor dress that was customized by Loki. The structure of the side abdomen was changed according to Ace growth, and with the advice of a certain god, it became the shape it is today. This armor will also change with Ace body shape in the future, and it will become more and more revealing according to a certain god's will. Ace herself does not know this. Because it is a modification of an existing armor, the price is much cheaper than a general custom-made armor. The gauntlets and other parts of the silver-white metal plate are made of light metal and white wood, which guarantee lightness and durability at the same time. This piece of armor will always follow Ace as long as there are no accidents. Even when Ace upgrades to LV5 and needs to wear first-class armor, this skirt armor can also be upgraded and modified. One must say, as Ace grows older, Loki's attitude towards her has also begun to change significantly. From the initial, troublesome little Loli to little Ace to now, Ace-tan. From the change in Loki's way of addressing Ace, we can see the bad intentions of this goddess. The modification of Ace's skirt armor is definitely not entirely out of good intention of strengthening her equipment and protecting her safety. But no matter what, it is true that this armor has superior performance far beyond that of equipment of the same level. So for Ace, the biggest problem in terms of maintenance is her weapon. Chapter 113, A Rare Species. Bloody Hive. Ace's current weapon is a short sword called Sword Ale, a custom gift commissioned for her by Finn, Riveria, and Gareth. Sword Ale type, short sword, special weapon, manufacturer, Goibniu Familia cost, 1 million Valis description, forged from Damascus originating from the steel mining country of Sharm. This gift to Ace Wallenstein offers exceptional strength and durability. Among low-class adventurer weapons, its sharpness was unmatched, though also notably heavy. It boasts high attack power and durability. The name Sword Toast commemorates Ace's first sword. Originally a top-notch weapon for a low-class adventurer, it could no longer keep pace with Ace's strength after she reached level 3. Out of her fondness for this meaningful first sword, Ace was reluctant to unleash her full power. Ordinary weapons simply cannot withstand her strength, even second-class weapons close to her level would shatter instantly. At Luke's suggestion, Ace invested all her savings to have Sword Ale fully strengthened, even borrowing some funds from Luke. The upgraded Sword Ale remains a short sword, but among those, it's quite long. To Ace, it now feels akin to wielding a long sword. The blade features faint blue ripples and looks incredibly sharp. Even Riveria praised its beautiful, light blue appearance. The upgraded Sword Ale doesn't only possess top-tier sharpness for a second-class weapon, it was imbued with the special attribute, unbreakable/indestructible. This doesn't grant true invulnerability, but extreme toughness and durability that make it practically impossible to destroy. Even level 6 adventurers like Finn would struggle to surpass its limits. While an unbreakable/indestructible weapon won't easily degrade, its sharpness and power still diminish over time. Most adventurers wouldn't experience this, but Ace is no ordinary adventurer. Even with its special attribute, Sword Ale will lose sharpness due to the intensity of her use. She'll need specialized blacksmiths to repair and maintain its power. Ace, pay attention to your right side. Luke quickly sliced 3 mad beetles in front of him in half with his servaresta. Ace, who was reminded by Luke, turned her body and rushed to the right, softly responding to Luke, got it. Ace's sudden acceleration caught the monsters off guard. Tempest. The emerald green wind storm swept away, instantly cutting the several elk-like monsters, sword stags, into several pieces. Luke and Ace were now on the 24th floor, the last floor of the large tree labyrinth, the latter half of the middle floors. It took them less than a day to travel from the first floor to the 24th floor. However, their high-speed advance was about to come to an end. Once they entered the 25th floor and officially entered the lower floors, their rate of progress would slow down considerably. Luke, 2 o'clock, there are deadly hornets. While killing the sword stags, Ace saw new monsters flying towards them from a distance. Tisk, it's actually these things. Hearing Ace's words, Luke looked over there and sure enough he saw a large group of pitch-black giant bees. Deadly hornets are one of the most difficult monsters to deal with in the middle floors. Known by the alias, high-class killer, deadly hornets have caused adventurers who come to the large tree labyrinth area a lot of trouble. Not to mention anything else, just their eerie appearance and their sheer numbers are enough to make most adventurers lose their courage and feel desperate. These monsters have almost the same living habits as ordinary bees. They always appear in groups. Their numbers are so large that encountering them is equivalent to encountering a monster party/feast. Moreover, the deadly hornets that Luke and Ace encountered this time far outnumbered ordinary beehives. With this number, it looks like we've found a hive. Luke glanced at the approaching monsters, and after finding that the number was unusually high, he began to look around for something. After searching carefully, he really found some strange places on the tree bark wall of the dungeon in the distance. Following the direction Luke was looking at, Ace also saw the strange wall. She reached into her waist bag and took out a cone-shaped object, pointing the tip at the wall and pressing it hard. Shoo! The cone-shaped object in Ace's hand suddenly flew out. This was something Luke had prepared to make up for the lack of remote support in their team. It was a long-range damage-dealing item. The cone was only the size of a palm, and its power could only be said to be barely qualified, but it could still be used to attack the monster's weakness, such as piercing its eyes. Puff! The cone flew over and hit the wall hard. At this time, the deadly hornets, which were still some distance away, went crazy and rushed towards the two of them with all their might. The wall that the cone hit turned to powder and scattered along with the wind, revealing a huge beehive buried in the wall. This is a rare species of monster that coexists with deadly hornets, the bloody hive. Rare species is a general term for monsters that are rare and less likely to appear on each floor. The items dropped by these rare species are very expensive, and many of them have additional effects that are extremely valuable. The bloody hive that appeared in front of Luke and Ace is one of the rare species. However, compared to some relatively harmless, rare species, bloody hive is extremely dangerous. At first glance, this monster looks like a pine cone, with a diameter of up to 7 meters. With its black and purple skin, it looks like an ugly fruit. As long as this kind of trap monster without the means of movement exists, the deadly hornets will hide in the hive and wait until the moment of prey passes by, and then they will knock off the tree bark of the dungeon wall and swarm out. If it wasn't for Luke and Ace fighting nearby and attracting their attention, they would either miss this hive or be sneak attacked by the hive. The biggest function of a bloody hive is to mass-produce deadly hornets. It is directly connected to the dungeon, and the spawn rate of deadly hornets in the hive is countless times higher than in other places. It can even be said to be endless. Moreover, while dealing with deadly hornets, other monsters will also appear from the fork in the way, which will make the battle fall into a vicious cycle. Chapter 114, Roaring Storm. Luke, what should we do? Ace looked at the swarm of bees approaching in the distance, a hint of worry in her eyes, and quietly sought Luke's guidance. Over the past 3 years, she had grown accustomed to relying on Luke's decision-making whenever they were together. In this moment, it was no different. To fight or not to fight? Luke had considered this question since first spotting the bloody hive. Honestly, he wanted to avoid a battle entirely. There was little to gain in facing such a vast number of low-level monsters. While they would collect an abundance of magic stones and materials, Luke and Ace simply couldn't carry it all away. With reluctance, Luke finally addressed Ace. "We'll break through the swarm as quickly as possible. Our priority is eliminating the bloody hive." With their plan decided, Luke and Ace simultaneously accelerated, transforming into streaks of blue and green light as they charged into the dense swarm of monsters. This was a well-traveled route on the 24th floor, frequently used by adventurers. If left unchecked, this troublesome group of mid-floor monsters would surely lead to the demise of many parties of unsuspecting adventurers. Soon, Luke and Ace collided with the oncoming swarm. Without hesitation, they plunged straight into the battle. Swish! With each swing of Cerberesta, Luke effortlessly bisected deadly hornets, sending them plummeting from the sky. On Ace's side, things were even simpler. Tempest. The gentle breeze surrounding Ace instantly transformed into a raging storm, clearing a wide swath around her in a single blast. Despite the loss of their comrades, the deadly hornets relentlessly pressed their attack, using their sheer numbers to encircle Luke and Ace. As the bodies of slain deadly hornets fell, another wave immediately took their place. Their sharp stingers, coated in noxious purple venom, made for a horrifying sight. For ordinary adventurers, these freely maneuvering aerial foes posed a serious threat. The deadly hornets' tough exoskeletons, unique venom, and overwhelming numbers often meant certain death. However, these threats held no sway over Luke and Ace. The deadly hornets found it impossible to inflict any meaningful damage. The prana defense surrounding Luke deflected all of their attacks. Their stingers bounced off his aura as if striking steel, producing sharp metallic clangs. Ace was even more amazing. Her emerald winds held everything at bay. The deadly hornets couldn't even dream of approaching her. The immense swarm proved incapable of halting Luke and Ace's advance. Luke continuously formed prana platforms beneath his feet, while the emerald wind propelled Ace effortlessly through the air. Like piercing beams of light, they tore through the swarm's defenses, arriving directly before the bloody hive. As they appeared, a torrent of orange-yellow mucus erupted from the hive, covering the sky as it surged toward Luke and Ace. This mucus spray was the hive's sole attack. While not particularly lethal, its high viscosity could completely immobilize an adventurer if struck. Most often, the hive used this mucus in ambushes, sealing an adventurer's movements before the surrounding deadly hornets pierced through their defense. Yet, against Luke and Ace's relentless advance, the bloody hive's counterattack felt desperate, merely an attempt to force them back. Ace, prepare for a decisive blow. Destroy the hive before the swarm catches up. I'll handle the mucus. Seeing the mucus descending, Luke tightened his grip on Cerberesta and intensified his prana output. Simultaneously, vast quantities of reserve energy flowed from the sword sheath of tranquility into his body, and then coursing into Cerberesta. Boom! Replenished with a surging torrent of prana, Cerberesta ignited. Black flames enveloped the sword, consuming the pristine white blade and transforming it into a flaming black magic sword. Luke swung the massive Cerberesta, unleashing its attack against the oncoming wave of mucus. Hoo! It seemed as if the sky itself was ablaze. The boundless black flames incinerated the bloody hive's mucus with overwhelming destructive power. Under Luke's precise control, the black flames passed harmlessly over Ace as she rushed forward. The hive's counterattack had been completely neutralized, leaving it defenseless against Ace's final assault. Locking onto the hive's magic stone, Ace softly began her chant, Lil Rafaga. As the third stage of Ariel's incantation was uttered, the emerald wind swirling around Ace erupted in a violent storm. Ace's attributes soared in tandem with the raging winds. Her sky-blue sword Ale and emerald-green Lil Rafaga shimmered together. In a flash of blue-green light, Ace slammed into the bloody hive. Boom! Ace's blow detonated, obliterating both the hive and the wall behind it. Ace, how about it? Did you find anything? No. After repelling the bloody hive, Luke and Ace had quickly dispatched the converging deadly hornets. Now that the dust had settled, they searched through the ruins Ace had created. After combing through the debris with no success, Ace walked to Luke and gently tugged on his clothes. I'm so sorry. My attack must have been too powerful. I must have shattered the drop item. Luke, who was in the middle of lifting a boulder, felt the tug and tossed the stone aside. Seeing Ace's guilt-stricken expression, he struggled to find the right words. They were currently searching for the drop item of the rare species, Bloody Hive. Any monster designated as rare was guaranteed to possess valuable drop items. For particularly challenging rare species like the Bloody Hive, their dropped materials often fetched prices several times greater than even the floor boss's giant magic stone. This represented a tremendous opportunity for Luke and Ace, who were diligently saving to commission first-class custom equipment. After all, vanquishing the Bloody Hive and clearing the swarm had consumed considerable time and effort. Luke had even tapped into the sword sheath of Tranquility's energy reserves, while Ace expended a significant portion of her magic power and mental energy. Unfortunately, Luke and Ace couldn't possibly collect all the blue-purple magic stones and deadly hornet shell materials dropped by the swarm. Ace's earlier attack had also shattered the Bloody Hive's valuable high-level magic stone. Thus, if they wanted this battle to be considered profitable, finding the rare species drop item was paramount. It's not your fault. Don't beat yourself up. I ordered you to eliminate the hive quickly. If the item was destroyed, the responsibility ultimately lies with me. Besides, drop items are always a matter of chance. Maybe this Bloody Hive didn't have one. This could just be bad luck. Luke's words lifted Ace's spirits slightly. Let's keep searching. Since we've taken care of the nearby monsters, and there's now a hole in the wall, the dungeon shouldn't spawn anything too quickly. We'll look for a while longer, but if we come up empty-handed, we'll have to accept it and move on. Heartened by Luke's support, Ace pushed her worries aside, focusing on the task at hand. Okay. I'll look over there again. Chapter 115. Ace, craving snacks. In the end, Luke and Ace were unable to find the rare species dropped item. Maybe it was really bad luck because, during their search, they didn't find any remnants of destroyed dropped items. Alright, we can't waste any more time. We need to get to the shelter on the 24th floor before nightfall. Having not found it for so long, Luke was pretty sure that the Bloody Hive didn't drop any material. Feeling that enough time had passed, he called Ace to prepare to leave. The final verdict was that no item/material was dropped, which relieved Ace, though she felt somewhat disappointed for not gaining any profit, but she was no longer blaming herself. Okay, let's go. After adjusting her clothing, Ace followed Luke towards the shelter. As they passed through the area littered with magic stones from the deadly hornets, not only Luke but also Ace sighed. Such a fortune just lying there, who knows which group of adventurers would benefit from it next. The thought alone made them feel sorry. Although they weren't particularly focused on money, it didn't mean they liked to waste it. Every time they encountered such a situation, Luke and Ace would consider the idea of bringing a supporter. But that was just a thought. They couldn't even find a new teammate, let alone a supporter. Scattered on the ground were not only magic stones and dropped items but also parts of monster corpses. When Luke first entered the dungeon, he was puzzled by the fact that monsters turned to black smoke and dissipated after death. It wasn't that monsters turned into black smoke upon death, rather, it was Luke himself who caused it. Normally, monsters would leave behind corpses. There are only two scenarios in which a monster's body dissipates. One is when the magic stone inside the body or its corpse is shattered or extracted, causing the monster's body to turn into black smoke and disappear. The other scenario occurs frequently with Luke and Ace. Excessive damage, also known as overkill. This phenomenon generally occurs when high-level adventurers attack lower-level monsters. Simply put, it's when a monster receives damage in an amount equal to or even exceeding the level of its magic stone in one go, causing it to dissipate just like when a magic stone is destroyed. Following the official route of the 24th floor, Luke and Ace, near a fork in the way, found their destination, the shelter marked on the guild-provided map. Using Servaresta to slice through a huge tree in front revealed a very spacious hollow space. This hollow space is one of the shelters recommended by the guild on the 24th floor. The area of the hollow space was comparable to a large hole. Around it, one could see some small white flowers and leaves, along with a sprinkling of herbs. 3 meters above, the dome-shaped wooden structure was covered in light moss emitting a blue-green light. Let's drink some water and rest a bit first. You must have used quite a bit of magic reserve and stamina by using the third stage of aerial. Let's have dinner after I finish setting up this place. Entering the hollow space inside the tree, Luke handed his backpack to Ace, asking her to sit aside and rest. Shelters exist on every floor as a relatively safe place to rest and recover. Each dungeon floor has a very large area, and the further one goes down, the larger it becomes. With such vast areas, naturally, the density and refresh rate of monsters vary accordingly. Shelters are placed in areas with low monster density and refresh rate, akin to a mini-safe zone, thus, they are also called rest areas. However, the safety of this place is not absolute, as there is always a small chance that monsters will spawn nearby. So, Luke still prioritized destroying the terrain a bit to ensure that no monsters would respawn nearby for a certain time. Then he would check for any wandering or hidden monsters nearby. After completing these tasks, he and Ace could relatively relax and spend the night here. Luke had done these tasks before, so he quickly finished them and returned to their resting area. Ace was resting near the entrance of the hollow space and handed him a water bottle when she saw his arrival. "Luke, have some water." "Oh, thank you." Taking the water bottle, Luke sat down next to Ace. He took his backpack back from Ace's arms and asked, "How did it feel to use your magic today?" Ace gently shook her head upon hearing Luke's question. "Same as usual, the third stage of aerial can't be fully controlled." The third stage of the magic aerial was developed by Ace after she became LV4. Although it was powerful, she couldn't master it well. A lot of magic and mental energy was wasted in the process, causing the power of the third stage to decrease. Today, at the last moment of killing the bloody hive, the bursting storm was proof of Ace's inability to master this magic perfectly. Recalling the scene of Ace using aerial before, Luke was about to speak when he saw her sneaky behavior. She was tearing open a biscuit pack she had sneaked out of the backpack while Luke was away, planning to put it in her mouth. Slap! Luke slapped Ace's hand irritably and took the pack of biscuits back. "You're not allowed to eat snacks before dinner, Riveria specifically told me so." Having the biscuit taken away made Ace very unhappy. She touched her hand that was slapped away and puffed her cheeks out in anger. "Luke, you're bullying me, you bad person." Facing the fierce glare of the Kaderi girl, Luke was not shaken and repacked the torn biscuit back into the backpack. "The bad person here is Riveria. She specifically reminded me to let you have proper meals even in the dungeon. If you want snacks, wait until after dinner. You can have them after the meal. But, I won't be able to eat them after dinner. Pat! This time Luke gently patted Ace's head. Then if you eat snacks now, you won't be able to have dinner, right? Ace, holding her patted head, felt somewhat unconvinced. I can still eat dinner after having snacks. Seeing the stubborn look on Ace's face, Luke couldn't help but sigh. Since you said you can still eat, then I'll believe you for once. Luke's words brightened Ace's eyes, and she eagerly extended her hand. So does that mean I can have? Slap. Since you can eat both, you should have your dinner first. The quantity is the same anyway, so let's follow Riveria's advice and eat dinner first. Ace pulled her hand back again, feeling from heaven to hell, and reluctantly looked at Luke's backpack behind him. Chapter 116. Luke wants to eat meat. Each area inside the dungeon has its own characteristics, making camping more convenient or inconvenient depending on the location. The large tree labyrinth, where Luke and Ace are currently located, is considered a comparatively convenient area. Luke ignites a pile of dry leaves and branches with a flint. The crackling sound of burning plants fills the air. A small pot sits above the campfire, a boiling vegetable soup within. Camping in the dungeon is often difficult. Some areas, dominated by rocks or waterfalls, make even lighting a fire extremely challenging. The reason the large tree labyrinth area is relatively convenient isn't simply because of the ease of lighting a fire. More importantly, there are abundant food and water sources. Food and water are the most vital supplies for surviving inside the dungeon. Apart from floors dominated by rivers or lakes, finding water sources in the dungeon is very difficult. Therefore, when exploring the dungeon, capable adventurers must replenish drinking water at known locations on fixed floors according to a carefully crafted plan. Luke constantly stirs the vegetable soup in the pot with a spoon. His cooking skills aren't exceptional. The food he makes isn't exactly delicious, but it's not unpalatable either. Generally, Luke handles the cooking when camping in the dungeon, even when Riveria leads the team. After all, one cannot expect delicious food from someone who was originally elven royalty, possessed great strength before becoming an adventurer, and holds a high position after becoming one. Ace, raised by Riveria and always seen as a princess by Loki Familia members, shares a similar lack of culinary talent. If Luke's cooking level is only average, then Riveria and Ace are definitely below average. Luke and Ace's dinner today consists of 2 bowls of vegetable soup per person, 1 piece of dried meat, and 1 flatbread. However, before starting to eat, there is still one last thing to do. Ace, turn off the light. The soup is nearly cooked. Humph. Ace unhappily humps, still holding a grudge against Luke for snatching her biscuit earlier. Despite her unfriendly attitude, she still stands up to turn off the light. The light source of the large tree labyrinth area comes from light moss growing everywhere, emitting a green glow that illuminates the surroundings. Unlike the crystals on the 18th floor, light moss doesn't lose its glow over time, meaning these floors don't have a distinct night. What Luke means by telling Ace to turn off the light is to remove the light moss inside the hollow space. When the light source disappears, it represents nightfall. This isn't only done to keep their perceived time in line with the surface but also has a crucial purpose, preventing monsters. The dungeon's monsters live year-round in this area and are familiar with the environment. When they see an unusual scene like a place darker than the surroundings, they'll cautiously choose to leave. As long as they don't make too much noise, monsters usually instinctively avoid darker places. Ace quickly removes the moss growing inside the hollow space and places it in several transparent glass bottles, creating a portable light source. While cleaning, she also slashes at the few cracks on the recovering wall, muttering fiercely. Swish! Bad guy! Swish! Stole my snack! Swish. Riveria is also a baddie. Swish. They all bully me. Swish. Swish. Want snacks? Luke sat in front of the fire, ladling the cooked vegetable soup into a bowl. He watched with amusement as Ace vented her grievances on the wall. After venting her frustrations, Ace calmed down and returned with bottles filled with moss. She took out 2 bottles, placing one at the entrance of the hollow space and the other in the middle. The rest were covered with cloth. This way, they could maintain a small amount of light while still monitoring the entrance. After finishing the pre-dinner work, Ace washed her hands with the prepared clean water and sat down next to Luke. Here, for you. Luke soaked the slightly hardened jerky in the vegetable soup and handed it to Ace along with the flatbread. Although Ace was only 10 years old, her appetite was no different from an adult adventurer's. To support her strong physical fitness, her energy intake had to be substantial. Fortunately, the food in this world was more energy-dense. Otherwise, high-level adventurers would likely all become huge eaters. Luke picked up his portion of vegetable soup and sighed as he looked at the pitiful amount of jerky. Although it wasn't just vegetables, the soup also contained some wild fruits and herbs collected from the dungeon. He didn't dislike his cooking. Being able to eat normal food in the dungeon was a luxury, and his culinary skills were just above the passing line. Luke sighed because he preferred meat over vegetables and fruits. While edible vegetables and fruits existed in the dungeon, they were hard to find but not impossible, and many herbs could stave off hunger. But meat was a different story. Ordinary animals simply couldn't survive in a monster-infested dungeon, meaning no animals and therefore no meat. The meat that adventurers ate was usually prepared before entering the dungeon, mostly jerky for long-term preservation. As for the bodies of monsters, the way they turned into black smoke and ashes the moment the magic stone was removed didn't exactly make them look edible. At least Luke had no intention of trying. Some monster drops included parts of their body tissue, which seemed edible unlike the dissipating monster bodies. But whether anyone dared to try them remained unknown. The dinner portion wasn't too large. They quickly finished 2 bowls of vegetable soup each. In the dungeon, it was necessary to keep their bodies ready for combat at all times, so overeating wasn't advisable. Under normal circumstances, it is not allowed to be 80% full. Staying around 60% or 70% full was the usual standard. After dinner, Luke, keeping his promise, took out the unpacked biscuit that Ace had torn earlier. Ace looked at the snack Luke handed over with a conflicted expression. She wasn't so full that she couldn't eat, but if she ate the snack, her food intake for the night would exceed the optimal standard for staying combat-ready in the dungeon. Even a slight decrease in fighting efficiency due to extra food was unacceptable to Ace, who considered killing monsters and leveling up extremely important. But the biscuit Luke handed over was so tempting and delicious looking. Ace held the pack of biscuits and fell into deep conflict under Luke's mischievous smile. Chapter 117, Lower Floors. Ultimately, Ace couldn't resist the temptation of the snacks and indulged in the biscuit. Unlike her happy expression while eating, after indulging, Ace sat alone in the corner, filled with regret. Luke was responsible for cooking, so Ace typically handled the cleanup after dinner. After tidying up and stowing the small pot used for boiling soup and the bowls for serving, Luke and Ace prepared to rest. Both of them would enter the lower floors early the next morning, making it nearly impossible to get a full night's rest thereafter. When spending the night in the dungeon, keeping watch is necessary. A small team like Luke and Ace would take turns guarding the upper and lower halves of the night, alternating between rest. Usually, Luke is tasked with guarding the lower half of the night. Guarding the upper half is less taxing on the body, leading to a better feeling the next day, so Ace typically takes this shift. Although late nights won't cause too much harm to their second-class adventurer physical fitness, Ace, being young, used to alternate shifts when Riveria was their team leader, sparing her from wasting her time. Time flies while sleeping, and before they knew it, it was time to change shifts. Luke awoke from his slumber very punctually. Sleep is a compulsory course for adventurers, especially for high-class adventurers who have stricter requirements in this regard. The middle floors are manageable, but in the lower floors and beyond, failing to fall asleep immediately or wake up on time could seriously hinder physical recovery. Subconsciously calculating the time while asleep and remaining vigilant of their surroundings are also essential qualities of a capable adventurer. Ace, it's time to change shifts, you should rest for a while, Luke announced, rousing Ace from her daze. After hearing Luke's words, she nodded slightly in acknowledgement. They didn't carry tents, nor did they plan to use sleeping bags. To ensure readiness for combat at any moment, they slept against the wall fully armored. This somewhat leisurely camping style and good sleeping habits have nothing to do with their team of only 2 people. Moreover, this habit was cultivated after venturing into the lower floors, where there was no time to set up camp in such dangerous places. Watching Ace with her eyes closed, Luke couldn't help but reflect on her performance in the dungeon. In the first 2 years after Ace became an adventurer, resting in the dungeon was a serious challenge for her. With a vendetta against monsters, she couldn't sleep normally amidst their breath. Even when she did manage to sleep, nightmares plagued her. During that time, if Ace wished to rest in the dungeon, she needed someone to hold her to sleep. At first, it was Riveria who provided this comfort. However, after Evelyn's activities led to Riveria stepping down as their team leader, it was Luke who offered solace to Ace. He had to gently hold her before she slept. Recently, however, this problem has significantly improved. Perhaps it's due to her leveling up, making her feel stronger, perhaps it's from witnessing the true horrors of the deep floors, perhaps Ace feels somewhat embarrassed to constantly rely on others. Whatever the reason, Ace has gradually overcome her difficulty of falling asleep and no longer suffers from frequent nightmares. The happiest person about this change is Riveria. No one besides Riveria, who lives with Ace, knows. Not only in the dungeon but even when resting in the familiar residence, Ace couldn't sleep normally. Ace, frequently awakened by nightmares, not only disturbed Riveria's rest but also caused concern for Mama Elf. Riveria feared that Ace's prolonged tension due to the inability to sleep properly would eventually lead to her collapse. Early the next morning. Are you ready? We're about to leave. After a night's rest, Luke and Ace had adjusted their state to the best. After breakfast, Luke decided to press forward and enter the lower floors. The 25th floor, also known as the entrance to the lower floors. That is the second deadline that only those who have undergone rigorous screening can reach among high-class adventurers. Starting from the lower floors, the dungeon undergoes earth-shaking changes in each stage. Hence, it is also called the New World. If the upper floors cater to novice adventurers, then the middle floors cater to upgraded high-class adventurers. As for the lower floors, they are reserved for the elite of high-class adventurers. As for the deep floors, only a very small number of strong adventurers are qualified to enter. Luke and Ace didn't take long to break through the large room at the end of the 24th floor. As they entered the passageway, a cool breeze greeted them. The passage to the 25th floor is a cave filled with crystals. The blue crystals surrounding them, coupled with the cool breeze, lend an icy ambience to the cave. Drip, drop dash. Splash dash. As Luke and Ace advanced, the sound of splashing water grew louder. Emerging from the cave, a wonderful and beautiful new world lay before them. Even though it wasn't their first time witnessing this magnificent view, Luke and Ace couldn't help but be captivated by it. The cascading waterfall created a symphony of roars, the crystalline sky formed countless valleys and cliffs. Water vapor hung in the air, and harpies and sirens flitted about. Sharp chirping filled the air, feathers scattering across the sky. A magnificent water paradise unfolded before their eyes. I'm always awestruck by this view. Luke and Ace stood at the exit of the passage, gazing out at the natural splendor before them. "Yeah, it's incredibly beautiful." Hearing Luke's remark, Ace couldn't help but agree. The 3 floors known as the Water City, 25th, 26th, and 27th, are truly a watery realm. The most iconic site in this area, and the main reason Luke and Ace are so amazed, is the Great Fall. This colossal waterfall originates from the 25th floor and traverses all 3 floors of the Water City. Estimated to be hundreds or even thousands of meters wide and several times longer, the waterfall presents a deep blue hue, likely due to the crystal's reflection. Its thunderous roar resonates like a tempest, stirring the hearts of Luke and Ace from countless distances. While they were previously enthralled by the enchanting fusion of dungeon and nature when led by Riveria to admire the labyrinth paradise from a high vantage point on the 18th floor, the impact they felt beholding the water paradise surpassed it. Even now, each visit leaves them in awe. Chapter 118, Discovering Under Coral. Ace, you can deal with the monsters in the sky. Luke dodged the massive claw attack of the blue crab with a sidestep, then swung his Cerberesta, instantly slaying several monsters around him. Taking advantage of the moment before more monsters swarmed him, Luke quickly scanned his surroundings and then said to Ace, "Prioritize clearing the sirens that are attacking from a distance." Compared to Luke, who could only form temporary platforms with prana, Ace, who could fly through the air with her magic, was better suited for aerial combat and was also more agile. Okay. Ace, surrounded by breezes, easily broke through the defensive circle of the melee-type aerial monsters harpies. Whoosh! Swoosh! The breeze turned into blades of wind, slicing through the monsters' bodies as Ace wielded her short sword. Both the harpies and sirens are monsters with the body of a bird and the face of a woman. Contrary to the beautiful and enchanting Water City, their wrinkled faces and foul-smelling bodies were the epitome of ugliness. Gurgle all. The sirens, ambushed by Ace, panicked and continuously unleashed their only skill, weird sound waves. The sonic attack of several sirens together was powerful, directly shattering a nearby rocky crystal wall. Meanwhile, the harpies that Ace had bypassed also flapped their dark red wings and accelerated towards her. With the yellowy siren's sonic attack in front and the harpy's sharp claws from behind, Ace remained calm and softly chanted, "Tempest." Whoosh! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The emerald wind turned into a storm, mercilessly sweeping away all the aerial monsters around, leaving nearly all of them annihilated in one strike. On the other side, Luke, facing the encroaching horde of monsters, also prioritized attacking the rear monsters. Not because there were ranged monsters on the other side, but because the blue crab simply couldn't keep up with Luke's speed. These unique monsters, different from the crabs on the surface and capable of moving in a straight line, were extremely slow, even slower than a level 2 adventurer. The blue crabs, characterized by a single massive claw and extraordinary defensive power, were among the easiest monsters to deal with in the lower floors of the dungeon. Leaping over the encirclement of blue crabs, Luke's target was the large monster aqua serpent at the rear. This 10-meter-long creature emerged from the ground along with the flow of water. It was covered in light green scales and fixed its large eyes on Luke, who was rapidly approaching. Just as Luke was about to transform Cerberesta into a great sword form with his body glowing with prana. Boom! A massive chunk of crystal rock fell from the sky, striking the aqua serpent on the head with tremendous force. What's that? Though surprised, Luke, who managed to brake sharply to avoid the falling rock, quickly killed the dazed aqua serpent. Then he looked up into the sky. He saw Ace unleashing a storm to sweep away the surrounding monsters. However, what caught Luke's eye, besides the emerald storm, was a fleeting red flash. Ace! Be careful, it's an Iguazu. Luke's warning made Ace, who had slightly relaxed after clearing the monsters, vigilant again. The emerald wind around her suddenly blew upwards, and Ace accelerated towards the ground, narrowly avoiding the swiftly attacking crimson monster. The Iguazu, which Ace had avoided, showed no sign of slowing down and crashed directly into a nearby rock wall. Boom! The impact was like a cannonball hitting, creating a huge noise. Along with the noise, the large rock wall that fractured from the impact and the Iguazu's body, which exploded into pieces, appeared in their sight. Crack, crack, crack. Boom! The crystal rock wall, bombarded twice, finally gave way, with countless cracks spreading apart. Large chunks of crystal rock fell from the sky, continuously striking the ground. Ace, let's go, we need to retreat before the wall collapses. Without any extra time to clean up the battlefield, Luke and Ace immediately sped out of the area covered by the crumbling rocky walls. The area of Water City, aside from the huge waterfalls and numerous lakes, also featured many mountain peaks, cliffs, and rocky islands. However, these land formations were not made of soil but crystal. The entire 3 floors of the Water City were made of crystal, a deep blue crystal that was slightly darker than the blue crystal of the 18th floor. These crystals bore some vague patterns, making them look similar to ordinary rocks. The source of light for these 3 floors came from scattered white crystals growing like bamboo shoots. Their light was not dazzling, so the floors were always somewhat dim. Ah, what a pity! Luke lamented as he looked at the area completely covered by crystal debris. Luke and Ace had a reason to engage in battle here. They cleared the monsters in this area because they found their entrusted target there. What a pity, our target. Ace stood next to Luke, also looking at the crystal ruins in front of her. Suddenly, as if remembering something, she excitedly tugged at Luke's sleeve. Luke! Let's head north. I saw what looked like a coral cluster from the sky before. Oh. Labyrinth coral. How many are there? Hearing the word coral, Luke also became interested. In the area of Water City, coral symbolized treasure. A lot, I think there's a good chance we'll find shells and pearls. Alright, then let's head north first. Luke's goal was the 27th floor, with the passage from the 25th to the 26th floor located in the southeast direction of this floor. The route from the 25th to the 26th floor was quite challenging. The entrance to the 25th floor was at the southernmost end, and the downward passage was on the southeast side, theoretically close by. However, a towering vertical cliff separated the 2 passages, and the floor's central area was completely covered by lakes. In this region dominated by aquatic monsters, lakes and ponds were the most dangerous areas to approach. So, typical adventurers would start from the south and travel through the west, north, and east, circling around the central waterfall to enter the next floor. However, Luke and Ace, due to their mobility and strength, plus the need to find their entrusted target, did not follow the usual route. Theoretically, they did not need to pass through the northern area of the floor. But if it was for the rare item under coral, taking a slight detour was worth it. Chapter 119, Encounter with Astrea Familia. This is truly a find. The 2, heading north, finally saw the coral cluster Ace had spotted from the sky. Clusters of pale red coral gathered together, resembling a short red forest. Luke was genuinely moved. Their venture into the dungeon had been anything but smooth, with hardly any gains so far. However, with this under coral, their adventure could now be deemed a profitable venture. Especially since he saw more than one white shell embedded within the under coral. However, just as Ace was happily preparing to collect them, Luke held her back. Simultaneously, voices of other adventurers came from another direction of the under coral. Wow, we're going to make a fortune, it's really under coral. Really, after selling this, I can buy some new clothes, come on, you guys, look over there. Another team got there first. The newcomers were a team of 11 adventurers, all female, and among them, Luke recognized an elf lady he had seen before. As Luke noticed them, they clearly spotted him too. Yo! It's rare to encounter other adventurers in the lower floors. The team's leader, a dazzling redhead girl with hair as bright as the sun, Elise, from the Astria Familia, greeted Luke first. It's not often we see adventurers who can make it to the lower floors. Ah, only 2 of you. Where's your team? Elise, with her lively steps and swinging her red ponytail, came in front of Luke and Ace. After seeing the situation of Luke's small team, she asked with a bit of surprise, "Did you 2 get separated from your team, or were others in your team wiped out by monsters? Or, it can't be that just the 2 of you came down here, right?" "It's indeed just the 2 of us." Hearing the girl's unabashed questions, Luke replied somewhat helplessly. However, his response was misunderstood by others as an excuse. As a member of Astria Familia responsible for diplomacy, the Paulum Lyra immediately came forward to explain. "Sorry, our captain tends to speak without thinking, but she means no harm. Elise wasn't cursing you, she was just asking if you 2 needed any help. After all, we are from Astria Familia, and I believe our familia has some credibility." While saying this, Lyra showed Luke the swordwing badge unique to Astria Familia. Elise, nudged by Lyra, also realized her mistake and made an embarrassed gesture with a slight tongue out. Sorry, I'm Elise Lovell, the captain of Astria Familia. By the way, which familia do you 2 belong to? If you're really in trouble, please don't hesitate to ask for help." Although Luke and Ace were well-known figures in Rio, not many had actually seen them. The 2, who often dived into the dungeon to level up, were famous but not frequently seen. So it was understandable that Elise and her team didn't recognize them. Just as Luke was about to explain, a crisp voice rose from behind Elise. "They are the 2 super rookies from Loki Familia, their names should be Luke Ashburn and Ace Wallenstein." Rio, you know them." Approaching from behind was a familiar elf girl, Rio Lion, who had encountered Luke a few times but had never spoken to him. "Not really, we've just met a few times." Responding to her captain's question, Rio shook her head, denying any acquaintance with Luke and Ace. "Loki Familia, if I remember correctly, it's not time for their expedition yet, which means you 2 really made it here by yourselves." Unlike their captain, who missed the point, Lyra instantly grasped what Rio was implying and sought confirmation from Luke. Seeing the conversation finally getting back on track, Luke also quietly breathed a sigh of relief. "Yes, it's just the 2 of us." Luke was confident in his and Ace's abilities and knew that Astria Familia was one of the few that could be fully trusted. If even the most representative familia of the side of justice and order in the city couldn't be trusted, then there would be no trustworthy familias left in Rio. "I see, I understand the situation now." Since our captain made her introductions, Lyra played the role of a good guy, and Rio provided clarification. "Now it's my turn to act as a villain, right?" As Luke finished speaking, another female stepped forward. With neatly arranged bangs and long black hair that reached her waist, this girl, embodying the classic image of a Yamato Nadeshiko from the Far East, was the vice-captain of Astria Familia, Gijuno Kagaya. However, the moment she began to speak, she shattered the elegant impression she had previously given. Malice, sarcasm, and even rudeness were all present in her tone, exactly as she had described herself, entirely in the manner of a villain. "It's time we talked about the distribution of this undercoral." With Kagaya's words, the atmosphere gradually cooled down. Even the previously enthusiastic Elise fell silent. What is before everyone's eyes is a difficult choice that they, as adventurers, cannot avoid. There's nothing to distribute here. Since someone else got here first, the loot naturally belongs to them. Or are you, as a member of Astria Familia, planning to commit the evil deed of plundering someone else's belongings, Kagaya? The speaker was none other than Ryu, who adhered to absolute justice. In her eyes, the facts were clear: what belonged to others was theirs, and one couldn't use any excuse to claim a share. Such behavior, in Ryu's view, was absolutely evil. Do you really dare to say that you can declare ownership of something just by seeing it but not owning it? And who saw the undercoral first is still debatable. Besides, I never said we should drive them away and monopolize this wealth. Even if we were to divide it based on the current number of people, our side should get the majority, right? Ryu's statement elicited a scoff from Kaguya. Having held a high position in the Far East, Kaguya was accustomed to the political struggles and deceit among humans. Kaguya was also on the side of justice, willing to fight against evil and even sacrifice her life if necessary. But that didn't mean she had to be selflessly generous, considering it foolish to give away gains that were within reach. In Kaguya's view, Ryu's noble idealistic justice was indeed respectable but not practical. Chapter 120, The Astounded Astrea Familia. Ryu, who insists on justice without compromise, and Kaguya, who also holds justice but has made compromises due to the cruel reality, quietly await the outcome of their debate. Lyra, who is indifferent to their argument, and Elise, who always manages to lead the Familia on the correct path between ideals and reality, are the core members of Astrea Familia. Your name is Luke Ashburn, right? Luke, standing to the side, is somewhat baffled as the group of girls has not given him much chance to interject since the conversation began. Thus, when Elise speaks to him, he feels a mix of relief and amusement that it's finally his turn. However, what Elise proposes next takes Luke by surprise. If you don't mind, would you like to collaborate with us to explore the dungeon? The redhead girl has integrated the information from the previous conversation and, after observing Luke and Ace, extends an invitation without hesitation. Having only 2 people in a team must pose significant difficulties in gathering materials and dropped items. If we collaborate, we can handle the transportation. In return, we need the combat strength that allows the 2 of you to be in the lower floors of the dungeon. Of course, I swear by the name of Goddess Astrea. Even if you refuse, we will not harbor any resentment, nor will we take this under quarrel before you. Elise's demeanor shifts from her usual lively and cheerful image. Her sincere invitation and explanation calmed the argument between Kaguya and Ryu. Honestly, Luke is surprised. Do you trust us that much? In the dungeon, especially in the dangerous lower floors, inviting strangers to join the team is not a wise decision. Can you tell me your reasons? Seeing that Luke is not resentful because of Kaguya's harsh words but chooses to engage in conversation calmly, Elise immediately reverts to her original tone. It's not that I trust you guys. It's because Lion doesn't dislike you that I judged you 2 are not bad people. After all, she's an elf and our Lion is particularly strict. Having met a few times without being disliked proves you're not bad. Elise. Hearing the captain joking about herself in front of strangers makes Ryu blush. She knows she's not good at interacting with others, but that doesn't mean Elise can say such things to strangers. But what really reassured you was seeing that I wasn't angry because of your team members' comments, right? You've seen through me. Luke sighs. Such a significant change in attitude is apparent to anyone. Regardless, Luke is indeed tempted by Elise's proposal. Having a team capable of operating in the lower floors to carry items could double the dungeon's rewards for Luke and Ace's team. Moreover, the other party belongs to the team of Goddess Astrea Familia. Just seeing Elise and Ryu's attitudes is enough for Luke to trust them fundamentally. As long as they do not betray his team, even if they don't help fight and only handle transportation, it's a win-win situation for Luke and Ace. Once the decision to collaborate in exploring the dungeon is made, dividing the profits becomes much simpler. Luke and Ace receive a portion of the relatively low-value items they otherwise couldn't carry. Elise and her team get a share of the undercoral that belongs to Luke and Ace. both teams profit from the arrangement. As long as their interests align during the exploration, no problems will arise. After successfully collecting the undercoral, Luke and Elise's team set off towards the 26th floor. Elise and her team are not on an expedition nor plan to delve deeper into the dungeon, so both teams' time and objectives in the dungeon are roughly aligned. Any slight differences are resolved through negotiation. However, during their journey, Luke and Ace's combat style astonishes all members of Astria Familia. Are you kidding me? Have those two always fought like this? No wonder they dared to venture into the lower floors alone. It's not just the lower floors. With that level of strength, it wouldn't be impossible for them to go even deeper. Deep floors might be a stretch, no. Seeing them like this, it might actually be possible. Even Elise, an adventurer of LV4, is astounded by their performance. Luke and Ace, transforming into a streak of blue and green sword light, effortlessly slaughter monsters, making her think she's watching two first-class adventurers in battle. Unable to intervene or, more accurately, having no chance to, the duo quickly clears the surrounding monsters without any need for assistance. After the battle, Elise, who has barely caught her breath, turns to Ryu and asks, "Lion, you're considered a top newcomer alongside them, right? Such strengths, when do you think you can achieve this?" Ryu doesn't answer immediately. Watching Luke and Ace fight, she feels a sense of defeat. Although Ryu has always considered them rivals, this is her first time witnessing their combat prowess firsthand. If it's just about destructive power, I can achieve that level with magic. But that agility to move through monsters effortlessly, without additional boost means, would need to reach at least LV5. There's no need to continue. Elise understands what Ryo is trying to say. In fact, she realized at the moment she saw Luke and Ace moving so fast. Elise, who has reached the limit of LV4, knows that those two can fight beyond their level. Fighting beyond their level, crossing the gap between the second and first class ranks. Loki Familia has acquired two remarkable monsters. After clearing the monsters, Luke turns and walks towards Elise's team, wondering why the girls keep staring at him. What's going on? Even if you don't help fight, at least you could help clean up the battlefield afterwards. Why are they just staring at him and Ace? As Luke approaches Elise with these thoughts, she suddenly asks a question that confuses him even more. "Luke, tell me honestly, have you two been hiding your true levels?" "Huh? What are you talking about? Didn't we already publicly announce our upgrade to LV4? Elise takes a deep breath, trying to calm her excitement. Luke doesn't seem to be lying, but this revelation is harder for her to accept than a lie. Never mind, let's keep moving. For the first time, the always energetic and vibrant Elise feels a bit weary.